Seen the peace, the light in eyes, and he said it's gonna be alright, alright.
Hi everybody, welcome to Endgame. We're talking about the future of art. Hurrah!
Yay! Okay, thank you everybody. So this is Endgame. We're going to talk about the future and how optimistic we are. Hopefully a few more people are going to join us in a minute. But so far I'm here with PK and GM3, who are both like heavily involved with doing art here in the virtual reality, environment.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. And yeah, PK, we've been working on a couple of shows, and recently he's been bringing together a lot of art from around all over the metaverse, pretty much into VR, man. So you've been showing me some really cool stuff, and me personally, I've been making a couple art galleries and trying to bring some of the artists that don't have VR into VR, because there's a lot of like 3D artists, and then some there's the people with the Oculus and the VR setup, and the people that don't. So it's kind of like merging all these new artists,
Before we get too deep into it, I just want to put the spotlight on you and just talk about the general future. So unless art is the only thing on your mind, throw that out and tell me, how else do you feel about the future? Are you like optimistic about things, or are you more pessimistic?
I mean, I'm really optimistic, man, because I think the playing field has been leveled for artists, and the cost of materials, like I think traditionally in like using paint or using canvas and sculpture and stuff like that, it's a cost, to keep up with your craft. So in here, by having it, basically all you need is an internet connection and this tool, VR chat, or whatever tools we use digitally. It's just a matter of taking advantage of that.
It's not just the material that you would use, but I think it's also the education. Like, I think there's sort of more resources to figure stuff out on your own to some degree.
There's like a level of interaction here that I've never seen before. Like, it's much different than being in like an actual gallery or, sharing art traditionally, but in here you can upload a piece and get like immediate feedback from people like all around the world. So the distance changes, it goes like immediately international audience, like an international audience kind of.
And about the tools, it's like when we started with the whole digital art, there's a level of abstraction needed to know how to operate, how to make this stuff on your computer. But as we get deeper into VR, we'll be able to go back more to using our hands. Like, it's a lot more physical or real. I don't know. I think it'll just get a lot easier for people to express themselves as we don't rely on keyboard shortcuts as much.
Yeah, we sort of go through this, like, it's not an uncanny valley, but what I mean is, like, we started off with real paintbrushes and real paint and painting on a real canvas, and slowly that turned digital, and like you ended up on your iPad using your finger with like, making layers and doing all these digital tools, but it's abstracted. You're not actually physically doing it anymore. And now we're kind of taking steps and going even further, where now it's reapproaching where we were initially, where it feels much more physical and like more immediate. I mean, you immediately went into art. Is there anything non-art related that you're concerned about?
As far as like the future of for an artist, like what they do, like
let's forget that you're an artist. What's going to happen?
The future? Well, I think I don't know. I think
That's deep.
all right. I think authentication is going to be the most important thing, and verification of sources soon is going to be like the big thing. So like AI algorithms verifying the sources of information, and then when that comes to what we're talking about is kind of like the assets of things, right? Like an art piece that's done in VR. How do you protect that? You know what I mean? To make it an authentic version. You know what I mean? Like, how do you know that it's the original art piece, the original digital sculpture? Without it getting copied and duplicated. So I guess I'm going to propose a question, like, does art get devalued by it being digital? Like, does it, or is that just arbitrary? Is it just all up to the buyer? So it's kind of like, it's all kind of coming together. Like, the playing field's leveling, but at the same time, it's changing the entire industry, I think, you know what I mean? Because it's a really big thing to be able to have almost a zero cost to be able to create so much and create all this stuff, but then who's going to put like a worth to that, if they don't have like a virtual home or something, or somewhere to put their art. So I think the future is going to be a lot of like sharing digital assets, you know what I mean, and then some way to control that and authenticate the sources of that, you know what I mean. So it's all coming down to proving basically who you are on the internet, because all this anonymous, like people that are making anonymous art say, you know, I mean, just for the love of it, that's like where I'd say art in general is like where it comes from, you know what I mean? And it's at its most basic form is like, you know, just doing it. But then with the digital aspect, it's much different, you know what I mean? Because I know a couple of people that have like 15 aliases, you know, and they don't even want to sell their art, you know? I know a lot of people that like put their name on their art, you know, and then they really want to sell it. So there's like a different, there's this big mixture of different types of artists, you know. I mean, it's not one or the other, and the whole thing is fractaling out in different like aspects, you know, because it could. I think we're gonna see more media though in the future, more integration of all of us, you know what I mean, and more of the AI, you know, dealing with a lot of that, you know, and like, pairing us up to like stuff. I think that could be maybe. I don't know think about that. It's kind of deep.
I don't know. Does that concern you guys? Like, are you already thinking about how you're going? I mean, we're sort of jumping way ahead, but like how you make a living doing virtual art, or are you just doing it for the lulz at this point? Or like what? I don't know. Where are you? Oh, by the way, this is CharlieTree. She wasn't here when we started. Welcome, CharlieTree.
I kept crashing. Thanks. Yeah, I haven't really like thought too much about selling my stuff on here, but I don't really think too much about it anyway. Like when I'm broke, I'm like, yeah, let me think about selling some art, you know? But for the most part, I don't really like think about that as like an issue. Like you can go and find my art and like copy it for free, whatever. I don't even care. Like it's on the internet, you know? Like I'm already kind of like, you know, people can do that if they really want to do that, but they can also support if they really want to do that too. So, but I guess I'm doing it for the lulz, for the fact, I don't know, that something like makes me happy to like see people like see my art and like say like what they like or, you know, how they interpret it. Cause like sometimes like I'll do something for shits and giggles and people will be like, oh, I really like how you like did this or did that and the meaning of this. And I'm like, that's like an alien picking some guy's nose, you know? Like, I don't really have like any like real meaning to it, but people will put whatever kind of thing on it, you know? It's funny.
Are you in that same area, PK? Like, what do you think?
I've never really done this for a living. I have another job that I do in the summers, so then I'm able to not care so much about making a living with this, and I kind of like the idea of separating art and my livelihood, and I feel like I get less bored with it. But at the same time, I definitely do think about it because the artists I do work with, I don't really make much from scratch myself, but I work with a lot of artists over the years, and it would be a lot easier to attract them if there was some sort of income to be made from this. And right now it is kind of hard because most people have jobs, and right now I think the early adopters are mostly people who have some spare minutes to experiment, but there's a lot of different ways we could potentially make this a living, but right now it's a bit difficult for most people.
Do any of you think there's something fundamentally wrong about monetizing it? Like for example, let's say that the only way to be an artist was that you had to make money, and so that focuses your attention, and you're going to have to make art that's commercially viable, and then you're not going to go off on your own down your own rabbit hole. Right, so like that's one trap.
In general, art is always going to be, you know, like sacred to the person, and then the connection of like, you know, intuition and their belief systems, you know, whether it be like that person just like expressing themselves. So the basic nature of art, like, yeah, it shouldn't be monetized, right? Like the natural expression of a human would make, whether it's painting or singing or dancing, all that's I would think is art, you know. But like I guess it's the pressures of the system that obviously would make people have to provide for themselves, and people want to follow their dreams. So to make money doing art would be a great thing for most artists, but as we all know, most artists don't make anything until they're long gone, right? It's the rarity of it all, I think, which makes it valuable, because like if you're, you know, if it's the more rare and more unique of the style you're saying you have, the more people seek out collectors and stuff. But it's like really it's all in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, and art, I think when they started using it back in the day, like they would hire artists to like paint pictures of like more wealthy people. So originally it was like kings and queens and people who had money that were paying the artists. So they're the ones who kind of originally manipulated the system and made it like an elitist type of thing, you know, where if you had money, then you would hire an artist to paint a portrait. So they would pull the good artists off the streets that were making nothing, and then you got the really good ones to bloom. And then that's what kind of made the whole, I think, hierarchy of high paid art versus like art that everyone makes, you know what I mean? Like everyone doodles. Why is that doodle not worth just as much as, you know, something else? I mean, some say it might be based on the time and the skill and the quality of materials, but I don't know. I don't really believe that, you know, because I think it could be. It all depends, you know what I mean? It's a variety of things, and like the times change, but to me, art reflects the times itself. So it's like whatever time it is, it kind of reflects that, you know. You kind of, and for me personally, I paint like sound waves, so I had to like find something to paint too, you know. Like what am I going to do? I don't know what to paint. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't trying to make money painting that, but it was like you find a style, and if you work on that style and you start abstracting that to a point where you like fork off and make a little unique style, then it creates a kind of like a reason for people to collect it. You know, it's something that they can recognize. You know what I mean? And then I've tried making like hundreds of styles and nothing would sell them. And if I do the same like sound waves for like a couple of weeks and do a series, say, right, those pieces would sell. And it was interesting to me like how that worked. Like when people saw patterns and repetition, and specifically the faces of people. Like when you look at this piece behind me, that face right there is popping out to me more than anyone in the room. It's like a face. You know, I don't know if it's about humans and faces, but I started painting faces, you know, and sound waves, and it kind of just worked. And that kind of sold. But you know what I mean? You can't like try to paint something to sell it, like you were saying. You know, it's kind of like it ruins the integrity of the art itself. You know what I mean? Unless you're doing a commercial work for somebody, I would say that's a completely different category as like, you know, self-expression. You know what I mean? And artists having to make money is kind of like, it's a sad thing, but it's not really the artist's fault. You know, it's kind of just like the situation. I wanna like wake up and make music and art and, you know, make a living off of it. I think I should be able to figure out some way to do it in the future, but it's going to be really difficult because it hasn't been invented yet, like paying for art with a Bitcoin or paying for art with something, or even like what is a print going to be when everyone has digital, you know, holograms as art. Like as it's changing and the technology changes, how do we deliver our stuff on new mediums? It really comes down to the delivery platform, and just learning about the greats and all the artists and all this wonderful stuff people have done in fine art. And I feel like virtual art isn't getting the same allure as a fine art. Like if you paint something in tilt brush as a 3D model, people are not treating that like fine art. You know, they're saying like that's just a video game, or that's just you know, something you could do with a computer. So it's not as good as like, you know, someone who can paint a perfect photorealistic person, you know. But I think a camera can do its job doing photorealism, you know, and the artists are the ones who should be kind of like abstracting these things and bringing new ideas. I mean, let the cameras do photorealism at this point, right? I mean,
wait, Catapult, you had your hand up.
It's a matter of having the passion to do it. Once you get onto a timetable, if you pressure yourself or you're being pressured, like let's say you got a record contract, the record company says you got to come up with a new album in 3 months. Well, now all of a sudden you're pressured, and the quality of what you come out with is probably subpar to what it could be if you would have had the passion, you know, taken the time and had the passion to do what you really wanted to do. It's the same thing with art. If you put yourself under pressure to produce something, chances are it's going to be subpar to what you're capable of doing.
That's true. Jinkster.
In regard to the money and such, that's one of the major negative aspects of the notion of actually producing art for money, is that generalization, but it does actually reduce the individualism and creativity, because the artist isn't creating something from themselves of something that they actually believe or feel. It actually is for somebody. And so that's the one of the major negative aspects of art throughout society, that a lot of art that the populace sees isn't actually reminiscent of what the artist actually was wanting to create and portray. It's something that somebody actually has asked them to actually create and develop from their own ideals. And in a way that also is parallel to the social structure of the different societies around the world, because art is actually representing the different socioeconomic areas and countries, to just be sort of simplistic, compared to the old classic days of Van Gogh, Dali, Monet, artists such as that. They were all just individualized, just creations from their own feelings and thoughts, whereas a lot of art created these days is from, in a way, commercial advertising nature. And so that is the only negative aspect that I feel that is encroaching the artistic ability of the world. I think it is slowly stray away from people wanting to actually make art for money, but there is still the niche of people that will create what somebody else wants just to make money for the notion of money makes you happy, which it doesn't really. So
Yeah.
So I think in the future, because robots are going to take all our jobs, maybe our creative ones too, but for at least we'll have an edge for a while in the creativity. So I kind of think that we'll start bringing art and creativity into a lot more jobs. In fact, that's going to be how most of us probably make our money in some respect. But I'm actually not sure if that'll mean we'll have more individual art too. I would hope so. So we'll be doing this commercially, and also it'll just be a more general increase in productivity. But that just means we're going to need ways of filtering through all this. So if more people are making art and it's digital, we just need ways of finding this stuff. Because I remember when MySpace came around and people started complaining there's just too many bands out, there's too much music. But if you actually knew how to search through this stuff, it all of a sudden got a lot better. You could find tons of new music, but some people have problems going through all these creators.
I'm one of those people. Like when you talk about, there's more people today, who are expressing themselves through art than there's ever been in history. But I can't find any of it, right? Like you find the commercials and the stuff that's shoved in your face. Like it's harder to find the individual work.
Yeah, we need like curators. So like in VR, you're just going to have all these different hubs, and people are going to be showing off their friends' art and like just collectives.
On the topic of curation, I don't know if you've ever played games on Steam, you've known that like in the last year or two, Steam's been flooded with like thousands and thousands of games, which are a form of art, I would say.
Yeah.
But then Steam's trying to figure out a way to solve the solution of having so many games in and trying to find, what's worth seeing. And they've created this curation system that's had some positives, some negatives to it. But yeah, you follow a curator, and then they recommend, they're the ones who go out and actually wade through
so they're actually labeled as such
of games, and then
they
recommend what they think is worth.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just like one of the solutions out there, I guess, when there's so much art, so many games, being presented to people, like a way to solve it. The other question I was wondering, we were talking about like how it used to be kings that would fund artists, wealthy people would give money to an artist, be their patron, but nowadays we have Patreon, and I don't know if I'm assuming a lot of artists, use the Patreon these days. What are your thoughts on like how that affects, the value of art when the money is coming from the people who want to see your artwork? It's not coming from some corporate entity. Does that, solve that problem of making money from the art? Finding people that want the art, and so they don't care, like, they don't have a deadline for you. They just want you to make your art. That makes it a little better.
Seems like a nice direct way of doing it if you're creating it yourself. Like for the stuff I do, I wouldn't have a Patreon, but there's also Kickstarter, which is kind of an in-between thing where you're giving people something special for their contribution. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about Patreon?
I mean, to me, it's a game changer. I don't know if Patreon specifically is going to fix everything, but putting the payment on the back end so that like I support you after I appreciate what you've done, not before, to me changes things dramatically, because then I'm just supporting all the stuff that I love, and I never feel bad about it, right? Like, I buy the ticket after I've seen the movie. Like, oh, that movie was shitty, I'm not going to support Michael Bay anymore. Oh, this movie was awesome, I'm going to give that guy extra money. Like, that's a choice I want. I don't know. Oh my God, hey, Psych.
Hey, I finally got back in. My God, I've been trying this whole time.
You know what works really well? Somebody I'm really impressed with their system was from the beginning Star Citizen. They had their whole Kickstarter, but what they're doing is they're giving you whatever you think about Star Citizen. They're giving you like ships, they're giving you like digital property, and they're put a lot of time and investment into it. They have a way of hiring some really good artists. Like some people I followed before end up working for Star Citizen, and then they're creating something they're enjoying doing, and then people support this game so they're giving them digital property for it. So there's a lot of different ways you could approach it, I think.
Charlie, what do you think? Yeah. Like, where do you want this to go? Like, do you want there to be a Patreon? Do you want to move beyond that? Like, where would you want to end up?
When people if they like my art, then they buy it. That's great. I have a problem when people try to tell me what to like paint and stuff, you know. It's just really like difficult for me to like create, especially because like when you have the monetary kind of thing going on, then they can come to you and say to you, because I do a lot of like commission stuff too. But and then they'll be like, "Oh, can you change this like one thing?" And you're like, "Oh, but I love that one thing. Why you want, you know, when you create a piece of art, it's a part of yourself that's leaving yourself, you know, like you have a lot of self to give out. But so when someone like tries to change that part, it's a really kind of intimate like thing, you know. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I like to create stuff, and then if people like it, then they buy it if they want to buy it, you know.
What do you think would happen like post money world? Like, why would you give art away, or would you, or how would that work?
Yeah, why would I give art away? Well, I would give art away because if I wanted to share myself with somebody, you know, in a more like deeper kind of way, because when you share like a piece of art, if you've like created it organically from yourself, you are sharing like something that you can't like look at somebody and see, you know. You can't like verbally describe it sometimes. I mean, maybe that is art though too, because words are art also, you know, stories.
It's connection.
It's a communication, you know, and it's a way that we'll like communicate with each other on a more like even deeper, going deeper than we normally do.
That reminds me of something like Adam J was talking about with like a sort of 3D printing and all these technologies that are going to help us sort of, it's almost like telepathic. We'll be able to convey ideas much, you know, easier and quicker, and it's going to be through art or whatever.
With VR, you would be able to express like when you look at art, you get a feeling and emotion, but when you like go into art, it's like a, you know, your brain just like goes insane sometimes. It's just like when you see stuff, and you're like watching through, it's like it's even more than just like I've looked at paintings before and cried, you know. So like whenever you're able to like then take that experience and then like immerse yourself in it, it's like amazing.
Yeah, but then like the personal connection I think is really cool, where it's like if money is not a concern and I give you something because like I want to share a piece of myself with you, like that becomes like a really strong I don't know, that there's something about that seems really romantic to me that I really appreciate.
Definitely.
All right. Hey, Psych, how are you doing?
Hello. Fancy seeing all of you here. Yeah.
My question is like, what's the point of art then? Like, if we go post money, like one thing is like sharing with you know, with each other, but there must be more to it. Like, and you're doing this more not just to make money, right? You have some kind of urge to express yourself or something. Why are you doing this? Why are you an artist?
Well, I mean, that's one of the hardest questions ever to answer, right? I mean, I think as we evolve, we learn more about ourselves, and like it's about learning about yourself, and like Charlie said, communicating, like, you know, and basically, me personally, separate from the curating of these art shows, you know, like I started painting, to break through that threshold of like finding out who I am, you know, and like trying to break all these barriers down, and you know what I mean, of who I thought I was, and I really use art to kind of find to learn about myself, you know what I mean? And then
how like what about it is teaching you, or like is it the fact that you're seeing it on the canvas or in the environment?
I guess when you like do a piece, you know, and you like take a step back and look at it, you know what I mean? You don't really know what you did. The more like you push yourself to just like use your intuition or trust yourself, you know, and your natural. I think everyone has a natural ability to do. Let's say, like maybe not to paint or whatever, just to be or just to do. So you break it down to the simplest form, you know, like the act of doing something and capturing that. Yeah, it's kind of like art. So when you look back and look at it, and you try to let it, you know, teach you something. Like you did something, right? But then you might go back and add another layer. You might see a shape in something. You might want to turn that into a face. You might scan it into your computer and make it digital and build a whole world out of a height map. Like I see it as a you can come in at any angle. And when I create, you know, I use it as a way to bring something into like existence that might not have been there before. But then what I'm learning about myself is that everything I'm creating isn't even like it's already been done before in a way, you know what I mean? Everything you do, technically, it's somewhere in the universe has been done before at some level, you know? So I like to, imagine that like what I'm doing is kind of like a representation of something somewhere, even though it might look like a mess or something. But if you just, appreciate it for what it is the act that's physically getting done, then that has to mean that it's happening somewhere else and there's a meaning somewhere for it because you just did it. Like, so the fact that you actually doing something and being able to like see it proves you exist to yourself, I think, because you just did something. So when you look at it, you're like, oh, I did that. And like, you learn about yourself by what you might paint a picture you never, you know what I mean? You might paint a memory.
Yeah.
You might,
also,
you might, move around. Who knows?
Yeah. I'm also hearing that it's like a source of meaning and purpose, I would say, because it sounds like one theory about that is that every activity that we do is an expression of our inner meaning and purpose. And so when you're talking about like the act of doing the art and what it's like to actually like create something, and it sounds like something that drives people and gives a sense of fulfillment as it's created and those connections occur or people are immersed in those kinds of things.
And then sharing with someone that's where it gets, oh man, I got to share this with someone. What are they going to say? And then when you start showing people, you're like, oh man, and then, like Charlie was saying, the criticism comes in, and dealing with that and seeing what people say is so interesting because you might paint something and then someone might see something completely different from what you thought you painted. So it starts to become kind of like not a game, but the game of life in itself. Like you could paint something and not tell anyone what it means at that point. You can just paint. You could use a seismograph and like paint a whole story in a poem, but it could be in shapes, right? Like I know Artist 3D invented his own visual language, and he knows all the meanings of all these letters, and he can put like a whole story in a painting, and you wouldn't even know. You know what I mean? Because it's like at that point you can start abstracting anything you want, and then give it meaning, and then people will find their own meanings. That's why there's so many genres of art, right? Like the different genres of each different thing. But I mean, me personally, I like abstracting and trying to blend the technology and the concepts of the macro and micro level of things, like looking really close into something or like really far and bending that perspective and trying to show you perspective on that, like, and I get obsessed with sound waves and light waves because I feel like that has everything. That's like a general common thread in everything. It's like sound or light waves. So I mean, I'm like, well, everything I do is either can represent a physical sound wave or a light wave. If the physical properties itself represent that on a molecular level, then, me personally, I just feel like that's the only thing I can paint, you know what I mean, that I'm seeing. I don't know. It's
and the proprioception in VR too.
Yeah, in VR you can actually paint. You can use to like do like, you know what I mean. You can actually move your hand in the Z space, you know what I mean, which kind of like opened it up, you know what I mean. And I don't know.
Silence your cell phones. I'll get back to you in a second, but I'm going to ask you two. Like, have you experienced this? Having a deeper conversation with yourself?
Oh, through specifically art. Yes.
Yeah, or maybe even through virtual reality. That's what I would be interested in. Like, when you made the crash pad, did that teach you something?
I really enjoy it because of the physicality of crash pads. Like, my life is very different. I use a wheelchair, so when I come in VR, I'm able to like manipulate things that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do in real life. So the crash pad to me is like a major experience because I get to like run all over the place and it's like being in a dream. You have like crazy like I don't know how I like act, I just kind of like threw stuff in there and I was like, okay, well that's gonna be kind of like weird. Let's see what it looks like. And when you go in there, it's just like, wow, I don't know. Like I'll create something and then I won't believe that it came from me. Wow, this is like a weird thing that's out there now, but this came from me, and that's kind of how I feel about that place and like the whole experience of art and like giving people an experience in art. And that's what VR really does. That's a whole like hide and seek kind of thing can do there. It's like you won't be able to find people forever, if you want to just go and hide, which is cool because I like to do that. And but in like my other world, which I was making my party tent festival, like there's a bouncy castle, and like to me that's like you get to be a kid again, and just like it's really simple, but it's a whole like an emotion that you're bringing out in people, and that's kind of like the art. Yeah.
Go check it out, everybody.
Yes, I do constantly.
Wait, PK,
yes.
Did you have a similar experience?
Yes, but maybe not as much as them, because I'm mostly working with other people's art. I find that I feel more like an inventor. for me, I'm using other people's smaller inventions and making something bigger out of them. Unity is great because I can do, like, I don't have to be great at modeling or animating. It's very modular, so you can make some pretty good stuff just by manipulating others. It's a good way to practice, and then you start learning piece by piece. You can start learning to do all these other things, and eventually you start doing your own modeling and stuff. And it's just going to get easier for people like me.
Jinxter, you've had your hand up for a while.
I'm going to continue with what GM was actually alluding to in my perspective with the artwork that I do myself, a graphic novel, comics and such. Some people may just look and think, oh, that's just a comic that's telling a story. It's similar to such and such. In my individual opinion, creation is actually a form of evolution. I have grown an absolute plethora, my personality and just social structure itself, from when I first started in high school. My interpretation of just the world in general has changed phenomenally just from my drawings in creation. And I feel as though the main reason why I like doing drawings and such is because when I show them to other people, to see what they think, not to think of the stories or the graphic design, to actually see their interpretation. And I then actually feel as though that allows me to actually grow because I can actually understand others more, how they think and perceive things. And that's what I feel is an important aspect of art for all artists, because it actually allows them to actually convey their individual creative feelings and opinions of things, and actually not just influence, but grow from others' interpretations of their creations.
Interesting.
I'm kind of going to follow that in a endgame direction. So you guys have experienced like reflecting back on yourselves and learning about yourself and having that communication, but you're all a part of the superorganism, right? Like of civilization as a whole, and how the hive mind is communicating with itself. You might be considered like big nodes in that conversation. Do you feel any responsibility? Do you feel that you're taking part in a bigger conversation? A lot of your art, it might not be obvious what it's about, right? Like you're talking about how people have different perspectives and different, they'll see different things in there. And I think a lot of it might be unconscious or subconscious. And maybe it represents the subconscious of the superorganism of man, of the hive mind.
Yeah. I always think about how real time it is. I feel like it's almost instantaneous. Like when you have an idea, if you don't like put that idea immediately down on a piece of paper or draw it, you always notice 2-3 days later something else in the world happens. The same idea you had. You're like, wait a second, I just had that idea. I'll think in the shower. I'll be honest. That's already, everyone has their moment. You just sit there and think. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you're gonna think of something in there. You know what I mean? And because it's the only place you have nobody to bother you. No phones, no cell phones. That's where everybody's connecting, is right there, because everyone's like taking that 20 minutes to like reflect on themselves, who they are, and then like I get most of my ideas right there, and then I'll immediately work on that stuff. So I mean, as far as the hive mind, I mean, it's whatever you put in, you get immediately back. So if you kind of like let go and put yourself out there vulnerably, I think you immediately get back like so much more, and you start having a conversation with it. You know what I mean? It's like you could be a part of the art community by really like letting go and not making everything so perfect, I think. So the way I deal with it is like I like to see my flaws like kind of like put up there. Like I'll do a piece and maybe it's not finished and I'll put it up anyways, and then to like, so that way you have a way to grow. It's like you can see it literally. You don't put your bar so high on yourself to where you get like, oh, I got to maintain this look and this professional and my style. It always has to be the same. That you can get all wrapped up in it. But I think the more you just like let go and redefine yourself every day, you become more and more a part of the average of that hive, because you're now moving and shaking. You're not all wrapped up in one little aspect, trying to make money on your one thing or whatever. You kind of letting go completely and getting in tune to it. It also takes a lot of research though, and like basically looking at a lot of art and watching all the documentaries and fully immersing yourself in it. I mean, I think if you get to that point, you just feel really a part of it. Like as I mean, trying to push art forward sometimes is I get like wrapped up in that, like trying to do something new that maybe no one's done before, maybe collage something that hasn't been collaged, or maybe write some code that'll do something that no one's ever done, or what I mean. I like seeing things that make me wonder, like, how did they do that, or what is that? I really appreciate when people push that forward, because it's mind-blowing, or how they get the perspective to make that optical illusion or whatever it is when you see it for the first time and it blows you away. Those those are those nodes you're talking about, you know, that kind of move everything in a direction, like whether it's a whole movement of art itself and a genre of art, or just somebody's one piece that makes everybody think. I mean, you can also say people the political aspect of it, and people making art to make a statement about, say, like something that's important to them. You know, that's another avenue. Can't forget about that, because art and its communication in general, like, is used as a vessel to you know, to speak for everybody too. You know, because if there's a lot of art that's in the same thing, it's bubbling up, like, you know, anti-political art or whatever, propaganda, stuff like that, you know, or people's personal beliefs mixed into art. I mean, it's all a voice, you know. I think it's all interconnected, and I think that digitally it connects us quicker, you know what I mean? It makes it literally real time. You could do a search in the genre, get inspired, go make a piece, throw it back right in the pool, and it's going to mix, and other people are going to see it, and then they're going to immediately get inspired, and they're going to go make some art. And it's like, you just got to get in there and get out. And I think there's going to be more fast-paced creation and streamlined, like, interaction. Like, as soon as you're done in Google, I can upload it to Google Poly, and it's immediately getting seen by people around the world, which is mind-blowing, because you would have to you'd have to draw on your notebook, wait till you get the opportunity to show somebody. So you lose some of the intimacy of the one-on-one, but we gain everything from everybody. You know what I'm saying? If they choose to be a part of it.
That moment where you're able to let go, I think is the way he said it. Would you consider that like being connected to the zeitgeist in some way, or I don't know another way to describe that simply?
I think it's like being connected to yourself, like you're behind your mind self, because I believe like you have your mind and then you have your behind mind, you know, it's kind of more running the show. You're not really connected with it all the time because you got too much stuff going on. And so like when you're able to...
Oh, well, no, Ghoster just said the unconscious, and I think, yeah, that's a really interesting way to describe what, Charlie, you're talking about. That part of the brain that you can't really access normally, and you're kind of like letting it guide you as you create something, or those, you know, creativity perhaps is driven by unconscious exploration or something like that.
Yeah, you don't have a direct line. You can't pick up the phone and speak to it, but you can sort of, you know, through artistic expression.
You can feel it out, you know, it can feel out. Like you can look at, like I tend to, when I'm doing like any artwork, I literally just like throw shit at it until like stuff starts happening. And then I'm like, oh, wow, I can see this and I can see this and I can see this. And I mean, there are times definitely I have an agenda. But when I do my comics and stuff, I have like to have a plot and stuff. So that's a story and everything with those. But with like my art, like paintings and stuff, it's more like letting whatever guide me, you know, and being comfortable with letting that out. And then maybe even not even realizing what's happening while you're doing it. And then you step back and you're like, okay, I've just expressed this feeling that I haven't even really like dealt with before, you know. I think that's what people are like wanting to do, and they like are kind of craving that kind of like connection with themselves, you know. Because I think a lot of the times we're like so bombarded with everything, daily life, and just like, especially in like our kind of society where go, you know. It's really nice when you're able to like, and it's really like you have privilege if you're able to sit down and like create, you know.
I think that's why technology has such a bad rap, right? Like you were sort of talking about the people who aren't going to be willing to come along with the digital stuff.
With automation and stuff, I think it's going to free up for a lot of people the ability to do what you're talking about and not have to be in that kind of go mode that some people who are working 3 part-time jobs and trying to feed their kids and stuff, it's hard.
I hope we'll have more free time to do this stuff. It seems inevitable because we just won't have that much to do otherwise, and we're competitive, so we're still going to compete. Hopefully we have a bit more time to think about these kind of ideas and how to express them. And
I haven't kept my eye out if I missed any questions, and I don't know if holding that cheese means you want to say something or if you're just miming cheese.
Holding the cheese.
I'm just eating my cheese, man.
Right. You know that cheese is a piece of art.
Yeah, that's right.
So is eating it.
Blue cheese.
Wow.
I have a question about the distant future.
That sounds like...
Yeah, let's head in. Let's start closing it down and head into the distant future to sort of conclude.
So, once we get really good at manipulating our brains, I'm guessing like if you start like wiring different parts of your brain together, it's going to give you different insights. It might drive you mad, but madness can make good art too. Like, Do you guys think a lot of people are going to start manipulating their heads just to become really interesting artists? Maybe
But is that different than like taking psychedelics?
Well, exactly. This is kind of like doing drugs in a new way.
Digital.
I mean, people might also just create designer drugs to specifically do this. To create something unique, you might have to put yourself into some new perspective.
I think virtual reality is pretty much, I think virtual reality is probably the most like psychedelic thing you could ever do. And it's like pretty much
so far.
This itself is kind of that drug and this experience, and being able to come in here and create anything you want. It's almost unlimited, right? It's like you can do whatever you want and then make whatever you want. I think you're right, man. I think people are going to augment themselves even more, and that's going to be another form of expression. And not only will they going to make like crazy nude like tattoos and crazy stuff, they're going to be like, once we have a way to like scan us in, people are going to want to be complete digital versions of themselves, and like they're scanning their bodies in now, low resolution, but then it's just, see what I'm saying? You got your body in right there, so pretty soon you're going to want your mind in there too, so you can talk to yourself, see how you're doing.
It already is. And that's what's so crazy is that our minds are in here. I mean, I think what you're saying, that's why we see avatars. I mean, you see how many hours people spend on their avatars. Like, that's exactly, it's an artistic expression literally of the self. Yeah.
Literally just change, right? Just change your form. Like, it's got a lot.
And in the future,
yeah, that's really cool.
Avatars and designing fashions for them is going to be it's going to be a big business. I mean, people are going to be buying designs from with their avatars, with their virtual clothes, with their virtual buildings. Like, you're going to hire like well-known famous designers to do these things. You're going to say, this is I don't know, one of Bill's works or whatever. So yeah, so it's going to be like bragging rights to have a home built by a certain virtual designer.
And we're not talking distant future now. Like, this is stuff that's coming really soon.
Yeah, it's big business pretty soon.
Anything you're excited about, Charlie?
I'm excited for people to like see their worth in something other than making money. I'm hoping that's going to go that way. Because once we have like robots to do everything, I mean, it's totally like utopic, but that's my dream. I mean, I remember one time ago, we were talking about the Dyson sphere. I mean, that's what we're going to end up. Once robots like do everything for us, the only thing we're really going to have left to like, I feel like humans, they have that need to like create and like feel good about like something that they've like done and feel like that kind of worth. And so we're going to still need to have that.
Some people will want robotic art, probably. It'll be unique too, but I think we're going to really look hard to find the human elements in these creations.
Are we going to solve art? Like if we're in a Dyson sphere and everything's taken care of and everyone can do it, are we going to have done everything at some point and expressed every feeling and reached the end?
No.
No, you don't think so?
Never.
I give us 150 years. There's no way we have more than 150 years of worth of content in our heads.
We have way more than 150 years.
I'll see you in 150 years.
Thought everything already.
Okay.
We'll just keep remixing
my brain is in a robot because I really don't want to die. I want to like see everything. So
yeah, I'm there with
plant
you.
my brain in a robot.
When you talk about like having done everything and experienced everything, like I remember there was just like this old Flash game called Mysteries of Time and Space, which is like this classic escape the room thing, and the basic premise is that everyone has done everything and everything is boring. So the only thing to really make things interesting again is to like wipe your memory and experience everything new again. Do you think we're going to go down that route?
Reset.
Maybe. I've definitely thought about wiping my brain to watch a movie again or like re-experience a piece of art.
I would like
creating wiping your mind of your own art and then going to see it.
You design a whole world like Charlie. You wipe your mind and then you step into Crashpad and you're like, "What is this?" And what will you learn about yourself?
Feel a connection. If you like had that kind of like, you wouldn't know why you were connected to it.
Yeah, I think they're going to use that with dementia and Alzheimer's eventually, to have people live in an environment that they don't really remember, but they feel more comfortable in. Also, I love this guy, and I was wondering, I think you should be in our photo.
All right, so is this the star of our photograph? Okay, so everyone, we're going to do a big group picture, so everyone has to come up to the front. And let's all crowd around here. Wait, who is this? Jim?
You can get down.
His name's Ethan Nichols. This is called I Am That. I Am That. That's his title.
This is really good. No relation to me.
Alrighty, in 1,
2, 3.
All hail Ethan. Goodbye.
I've seen that man before.
You guys want to do a podcast? Yeah. Welcome to After the End. This is the post-Endgame podcast that we're starting now with everyone. So what do you guys think? Our podcast a dead art form? The only thing it has going for it is that it doesn't have video, so you don't have to look at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of times when you can listen to stuff and you can't watch it. So I love podcasts.
I don't see why you couldn't consider a podcast a form of art.
Now, by the way, guys, podcasting isn't art. TV's not art. Games aren't art. Movies aren't art. Only sketching. I think sketching with a pen on paper, that's the only thing that counts.
One form. Are you using processed paper? If you are, then it's not art. It has to be pure papyrus and charcoal.
Charcoal? You're not using a cave wall? What's wrong with you?
If you're not using your own blood on a cave wall, you're not doing it.
Cavemen didn't use their blood.
They use blood. They use animals' blood sometimes, I'm sure.
Yeah, that is art. That's where art came from. That's probably why we evolved art in the first place, to draw those things.
To sort of convey a story.
But communication in general has evolved so that we can like help each other survive, and so then art, drawing things on the wall became something that helped people survive. So people who are artistic, who are really good at drawing, probably could convey better information.
There's a new book, Sapiens, is popular, and I haven't read it, but I've heard a lot about it because like the main premise is that what made Homo sapiens different and kill all the other apes was that we could tell a story. Because, like, you could have a tribe of up to, like, 100 people or whatever, and you can communicate and make it work. But how do I get my tribe to grow more than 100 people? I have to, like, convince people of a bigger idea, and I have to tell them a story. Yeah. And that was, like, our special sauce that made us win. And that's why, like, storytelling is such a core component.
Yeah.
Swarm, and then you become a hive mind already. So, I mean, without that, you're an individual. A group is smarter than a single ape. So, yeah, that definitely made a big difference.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie.
Good stuff.
Damn, Charlie.
Oh, hey, Daphne, what happened? Where am I?
Oh, we're in the crash pad. We're just having a good time.
Oh, look, it's the crew. It's the crew.
Ooh. Come on, Scoops. It makes you feel better.
Scooby.
Thanks, Shaggy.
Hey, Velma, you want to pass that over here?
Well, sure. Oh, hey, where did the pipe go?
I guess we got a mystery to solve.
Woo! Oh,
Yeah!
I know where to start.
It's right there on the floor.
The mystery's this way, guys. The mystery's this way.
I've got all of my friends waiting for the sun.
What is that? Do you guys see that? Tell me if I see that. What's that? Is that a bird? It's a chicken? I see that, right?
Spirit animal, bro.